All right, welcome to week 20. This should be week 22. That's an error. But today we are going to look at malware. What malware is? I think you might have done this in probably core intermediate. So what malware is, go through a few other things. And then we look at static analysis of malware and dynamic analysis of malware. Then we look at some tools that we'll use, and then we'll go through a malware analysis demo. Now today, because we are feeling dangerous, the demo today would actually be a walkthrough of the assignment, just like we did with the buffer overflow. And I said it 3 weeks ago that the professional track keeps getting more and more intense. So try as much as possible not to get lost. If I miss you or if I do anything that is not understandable, just keep your question. If I ask for questions, you let me know. At any point in time, just let me know you have a question and I would answer them. Your understanding is my priority. That's my mantra to the end of the start. All right. Now for malware, we have malware is basically malicious software. You all know that. It is any program or file that is intentionally harmful to a computer, network, or server. I'll fix that typo. And types of malware include viruses, worms, spyware, trojans, ransomware, and then rootkits. Now, malware can infect networks and devices, and the severity of the consequences depend on what the malware is, right? So some malware would just want to log keystrokes, and this is a keylogger, right? So a keylogger, which you've all met before, once you're typing, it actually picks up whatever you are typing into your keyboard. I once had one on my desktop years ago because I knew that my siblings like to use my laptop, my desktop. So I innocently, not that I was spying on them, not creepy at all. So I had it on there just to, make sure that my machine is not used wrongly. So when they use my machine or my desktop, what happens is whatever they are typing, I had a software on it, which was a keylogger, and then it keeps just picking out whatever they are typing. And then that same tool also takes a screenshot of the screen every now and then to just show what's happening, let's say every 10 minutes. So at the end of the day, I come back from wherever I went to, I go into my keylogger and I check and I see that, oh, they logged into Facebook and they typed in their password. So everything, I didn't use it because, I'm ethical. Then I also saw the screenshots of the pages they visited and everything else. But that is the job of keyloggers. They actually help a lot. But some malwares or viruses would actually perform this task. When you pop a shell in Metasploit, right? And then you get a shell. One of the options is that you can record the keys, which is to just perform the act of keylogging, which is also existing there. But then it's a bit hard to pick up since whatever system you're using is in a virtual box, so it's hard for Metasploit to pick up the keystrokes. Now, encryption of data, what type of malware does this fall under? Encryption of data, what
ransomware.
Thank you very much. So ransomware does the special task. And then compromised data and passwords. So some of the effects of these malware could be that it could compromise your data and password. I think there was this Windows, Chrome, before, if you go to any site and you're using Chrome and you've already logged in before, once you click on the username password, Chrome will just show your username and password to you that, hey, this is you, look, use it. And that made it very convenient for users. However, it became very dangerous because if anyone just uses a rubber ducky, like it's basically a USB drive, or they just put a set of tools on the USB drive that can just extract that use all your passwords, because Chrome was storing it in a particular place on the system. So once you insert these USB drives, they go into these locations and then extract the information from these files and then dump it on the USB drive. So once I take it out, I go back to wherever I want, I will have all your details in there. But in recent times, it's quite hard to pull these off because now Chrome uses what we call master passwords. So before that could happen, a master password has to be entered and all of that. And then, and many more, we know that, and many more, you know what that means, right? There are other things that malware could do. Now, how is malware spread, right? It could be spread through untrustworthy USB drives, of course. You don't use a USB drive that does not belong to you. Drive-by downloads, where you basically just download anything you find on the internet. You don't check the source, you don't do anything. Once you go to a site and then you see download, I think there was a time where if I wanted new music, before all of these streaming sites became too popular, if I want new music, there are certain sites, I didn't go there, officially I didn't, but there are just certain sites you go and then you find these, music albums and all of that, new albums, and then it's uploaded there, and it wasn't legal. So because these attackers know that people want to download these new albums by very, very popular artists, they create a whole fake website, tell you that the album is available for download, just click on this, download the file, and apparently what you are downloading is a virus. So in the end, I mean, they got me for a while until I became wiser, and I was like, never again. So that's where that comes from. Because once you download these files, you realize that you are trying to download an album which is supposed to be minimum of, let's say, 90 megabytes. And then in the end, the album, you download the thing and it's a zip file and it's only, let's say, 15 kilobytes, right? But not everyone watches the file size and everything. So then that was also dangerous. And phishing, which we all know what phishing is, trying to trick people into giving information, mostly through email, and then visiting websites that might have cross-site scripting enabled. Sometimes, I think at a point they said, if you want to use someone's computer, make sure that probably it's not wise to use it for any personal thing you want to use it for. So if you are visiting websites that you don't have any, I think certain websites will even ask you, allow notifications, allow this, allow that. And most of them, once you keep allowing, they ask you, allow the download, you click on it, and then you've downloaded something you're not supposed to download. So we have our ransomware here. All right. So authors of malware can use evasion techniques to fool users, and antivirus is known as obfuscation. Now, obfuscation is where you change the structure of the application to a stage where it is not easily recognizable by antiviruses and detection tools. Some tactics are simple and others include polymorphic malware. Now, polymorphic malware is quite smart, and what it does is it dynamically alters its code to avoid signature-based detection tools. So what happens is today it could look like A, tomorrow, based on whatever signature-based detection tool is available, it could also change. So it's not static, right? It's not one way. So the next day you would see it, or maybe some other time, you would see that same malware and its signature is different. So that is where polymorphic comes in. It keeps changing its state or its structure. And then you could also have malware that resides in RAM. Now, this is where fileless malware comes in. And these malwares are very hard to detect because most of these antiviruses are looking through your file system, looking through processes that are running. Now, fileless malware runs in the RAM, right? It could be running in the RAM or it could be running in the registry. It could just be doing certain operations. What happens is once it is done doing what it has to do, once you turn off your computer, it doesn't exist anymore because it is residing in RAM. And we know that once the computer goes off, RAM no longer exists. Like whatever is in RAM is lost. You turn it off, turn on your computer again, and that same guy pops up again, doing what he has to do. So this type of malware is quite hard to detect unless there is because I think now antivirus softwares have memory analysis functionalities where they're able to analyze RAM. But even with that, they are limited as to which areas of RAM they can access. You remember there's kernel space, there's user space. So they are limited. So if the virus is finds itself in the kernel space area or whatever it is, then it becomes very dangerous and you would not find it. That is where rootkits and all of that comes in. So worms spread across computers, networks, and all of that. And then Trojans, they look like something, they look like what they are not. So they could be coming just like the album. They are coming in like the album I wanted, but in the end, it's not the album I wanted. It was a 15 kilobyte album, which is impossible. But I've fallen for it in the past. Then turning your computer into a zombie, this is where botnets come in. When you could be used for DOS, a distributed denial of service attack, because you might be there and your computer starts heating up, but you're actually part of a bigger purpose. You are serving a higher purpose. So that is where that comes in. So with malware analysis, right? Why do we analyze pieces of software? First of all, we might want to uncover sophisticated practices that are happening. We may want to detect similar malware in the future. The thing is, malware that you might see, maybe the same malware that you're seeing today might be operating differently tomorrow, right? Because whoever wrote that malware knows that, okay, when I wrote the malware, this and this, maybe I walked through door 1 to execute my malware. Now, if after it's been detected for a while, whoever wrote it might change it a little bit and then use door C instead of door 1. Sorry, door 3 instead of door 1. Now, due to that, whatever tool that might detect its operations will not be able to detect the new operations because it's changed where it wants to go. So it's always advisable that you always analyze malware, look at how it is operating, and then note it down, share it, intel, share that intelligence with other security researchers, and then that's how we've survived all this while. Otherwise, I think antivirus tools would have been doomed by now. But because they're always analyzing malware, they're able to create signatures, they're able to detect patterns, and then it helps to detect future iterations of the tools. Then it also helps us understand how it functions, discover propagation and infecting methods, right? How are these malwares infecting these computers? Are they using phishing emails, or maybe they are just using regular downloads? And then also antivirus evasion techniques. You remember we just talked about polymorphic malware, saying that it changes its states dynamically. Today it could be this, tomorrow it could be that. Or it could also be obfuscated, where the code has been changed. Today we are going to see a code that has been obfuscated, and it's going to be interesting. You're going to see the code all right, but it doesn't look like code because it's looking like gibberish. It's been encoded. So we'll look at that today. And then how persistence is obtained. So persistence is where you have attacked the system, but then the thing is that while you attack the system, you are logged in as, or let me find a nice example. When we did, we attacked, trying to find a nice example. So when we attacked certain machines in the past, let's use buffer overflow, right? When we did the buffer overflow, there's a type of payload we could use where this would not work on it, but we didn't use that type of payload. We did not do the exit function, all of that. So with what we did last week, what happens is immediately you close or you stop the POP3 server, immediately the whatever shell you have or the netcat would actually stop working. That's because the shell that we got it from the application. Now, persistence is where even though we exploited the system using POP3, we migrate to a different application that exists on the system or a different process. And we know that most computers have explorer.exe working. Explorer.exe is when you are using Windows, I'm going to show that when we start the malware, so you see what this is. So explorer.exe is the window you see when you want to go through the file manager, right? When you open, if you download a file and you go to the file manager where you see my computer here, you see my documents, my download, and then there's a search bar here that you see all the files you have downloaded, right? On Windows machines, this thing you are seeing is being run by a process named explorer.exe. So explorer.exe, exe is executable, .executable. So explorer.exe is always running on most Windows systems. It's very rare that you have a Windows system that explorer.exe is not running. So since I've exploited a system as POP3, what I would do is I would move my exploit from POP3 and jump onto explorer.exe because I know that it would always exist. So once I've jumped, what I've done is I've moved, right? I've moved to a new process, and with that, I'm able to maintain persistence. Now, even with this, I could, because it's a reverse shell, that means anytime the person turns on the computer and explorer.exe is running, it will try to connect to my Kali, which is the reverse shell. So persistence is where you are able to stay on a system without trying to hack it again and hack it again and hack it again. Meaning you are there and you are stuck there. You can always go back in anytime you want without going through Metasploit, without going through buffer overflow, without going through other process. Now, it could be more complicated than the example I gave, and there are different ways of getting persistence. Now, certain malware, we have specific malware named rootkit, and this mostly hides within the kernel of the system. And we talked about kernel last week. So this type of malware is just hiding and it's just running within the kernel. So anytime the computer comes on, it comes on, and then it gives the attacker remote access to the system. Once the computer goes off, it's done. The computer turns on, because it exists in the kernel, it would always be run, and that is where rootkit comes in. So persistence, whilst we analyze, we'll be able to see that, okay, this is using some persistence methods, and it would help us know what to do later. Now, authors, right? So authors are the people that write these malware, right? Malwares do not write themselves. People write it. It has codes, it has evasion techniques, it has encoders. Sometimes, based on what we have, we would be able to know that these are the ones that wrote this malware. And every ransomware, most ransomwares that have been discovered so far, most of the time, whoever wrote it comes out to say, whatever group that wrote it will come out to say, this was written by Derek Incorporated, and we are hackers, we are on the dark web, and we know you can't catch us. So then that helps us find that out. But some of them will put their information in the code, sometimes mistakenly, or sometimes they just want you to know that they are the ones that did it. And once we find out information about the malware, we can get this to our SOC team, Security Operations Center. And then once we know that this is happening, they might patch it. They might put certain rules in the IDS so that this attack does not repeat itself in future times. Now, when it comes to malware analysis, we have static and dynamic analysis. And both of them are essential for getting the full scope of what a piece of malware is capable of. So today, we'll look briefly at some static analysis, jump into some dynamic analysis, because that's where all the juice is. All right, now static analysis. With static analysis, we don't run the malware. We just run it through certain tools to find out information about it. So we would run one that would tell us what's happening and what we should know and all of that. So with this is an example of a static analysis tool. I don't know specifically which one this is, but then it tells us the lines of code. That's 11,999. I think the types also make sense, where there is assemblies, namespaces, this is analyzing the code, and then issues. Yeah, this is a bit messy, but we'll actually take a look at this, an example of a static analyzer shortly. So analyzers looks at the functions and codes and the libraries that is loaded onto the stack to trace execution. So it could tell you that, hey, there is this code might be packing extra information that you don't know, or this code might be encoded, or stuff like that. So decompilers gives you code at a high level language that is readable by humans. So the malware is compiled, right? Today we are going to look at a Microsoft doc file, right? A Word file, Microsoft Word file, which has malware within it. And upon investigation, we'll find out that this malware has code within it. And we'll analyze all of that code. So decompilers would help you see the code from a high level language perspective, because code, most of the time, we'll start from high level language, right? It's high. So something like Python, the Python we did last week for the buffer overflow, that's a high level language. Now, when a Python is broken down into assembly language, that is low level, right? That's assembly. That's assembly language. Now, to give perspective of this assemblers will give you the code in assembly language, and then debuggers are used to spot any obfuscation or packing of the malware, right? So I'm going to do, let's look at a bit of assembly, right? Just to see how it works, okay? Just a sec. So all this while I wasn't seeing the chat, I just saw the chat. Mamma mia. I hope you can still see my screen. All right, so let's look at a little bit of let's get my annotation tool here, and then just where's the text? All right, so this is how assembly language looks like, right? So assembly language has commands, and this command, right, MOV, we could do something like, let's say EAX, and then put command and say 3. Now, what this means is this is what we looked at last week, right? I could say that I want a variable named name, and what is in the variable is the name Derek, right? Which is a string because I put it in quotes. Now, another variable named age, and that is maybe my age is 29, right? So this is the variable name, and this is the value that we are storing. It's just a place to store information, that's all. Now, besides that, this, which is the assembly language, is basically just saying something like this. Need to get the selector. All right, so what I'm saying is put this value into the variable named EAX. Now I'm going to do the equivalent in regular programming, and this is how it looks like. EAX is equal to number 3. So now let's take out these guys because we don't need them. So I'm saying there's a variable named EAX is equal to number 3. There's a variable named, let's say, EBX. I could name the variables anything I want. That is number 4. Now, I want you to sum it up, right? So sum is equal to EAX plus EBX, right? So if anyone wants to know the value of sum would be 7, right? So sum is equal to 7, basically. That is the evaluation of this equation, right? Now, we are going to move this into assembly. And if you write this code and your machine has to break it down into assembly, which is what your systems might understand, low-level code, this means that move this value and store it in a variable named EAX. And then I'm going to do the next one, which is EBX, and then comma, and put that in 4. Now, in order to add them in assembly, there's a command, or there's a keyword, which is add. And all I'm going to do is EAX, comma, EBX, comma, ECX. So this command means that we are going to pick up EAX. So this command is going to pick up the value of EAX, right? All right, the value of EAX, which is 3, and then EBX is going to add them together and then store the value into, okay, so there's a mistake, sorry. Yeah, this is sum. So then the same thing, this is the equivalent. So at the end of the day, this is what we have if we were doing assembly. So if I code this in Python, it would be translated, a disassembler from the slide would give me this code in assembly language, because that is a low-level language, and that is what the CPU will understand. So most of the time, it's already done for you. You don't need to do these things. I hope that was clear. Throw some ones in the chat if that was clear and that was not messy, too messy. All right, perfect. So now after this, I think we just went through an assembly language boot camp. So I think you guys are ready to be assembly language programmers. Now, when it comes to dynamic analysis, the analyst would execute the malware in a sandbox environment where every process and system call is monitored. So in this case, it's malware and we are going to run it to see how it works. So there's no way I'm going to run that on my Mac. There's no way you are going to run that on your operating system directly. You might need to put it in a sandboxed environment. And a sandbox is an environment that is cut off from all external connections, and everything that happens there stays in there. Nothing seems out, because most of these malware have commands that are going to retrieve information from the internet and all of that. Before you know it, they are done with you. So dynamic analysis can find indicators of compromises, such as registry key changes, file extension changes, privilege escalation, or you could find maybe trying to access information from the internet, trying to download certain files. It also provides a look into scheduled tasks, and this is very important. Some malware, once it gets on your machine, it migrates to a new process, or it tries to do some persistence. So it moves to a new process like explorer.exe, and then it sets up a reminder in your scheduler where anytime you turn on your machine, it will tell your computer to do a specific task. So most of the time you do that, go through this. So funny story, I went to, when I was in Saudi, I think late last year, and then there was the Black Hat conference was going on. So I attended with a lot of my students. And then when we got there, these guys had 3 machines, 3 computers, and then they are like, hey, all these computers have a particular task, and if you can complete it, you are going to get a prize, right? And the task was that one computer had a file. It was a file, like, let's say a doc file, and immediately you delete the file. After 5 seconds, if you reload, after 5 seconds, the file will reappear. If you delete it again, it would reappear. Now you have 10 minutes to find a way to stop the file from reappearing. Now, I went with my students and I could do that. It's 50-50. It's either I could do it or I can't. But however, I have 10 minutes to do all of that. And under normal circumstance, first thing I would do is to delete the file, right? And then go into the event viewer on Windows, which will probably list all the scheduled tasks. And there might be an event that just happened right after I deleted it, which would create that file again or copy the file from a remote location. But then because I have 10 minutes and I saw others do that same thing, go through the event viewer and still saw nothing, I was like, okay, there was a high possibility whoever did the thing had probably hidden that event from the event viewer, done a lot of obfuscation so that it's not properly clear. But because I had my students there and my reputation was so high, I didn't do the challenge because I had to keep my reputation. But that was an interesting situation. And with that is where scheduled tasks would come in, because it's sort of sniffing for a particular activity, which is to delete. And once it is deleted, it brings up the file again. And for the whole 24 hours, no one was able to do it. It was on the next day of the conference. It was a 3-day conference where I think about several people started figuring it out to do it. And I believe people were communicating with each other and they figured it out. But it was an interesting task. So that is where scheduled tasks would come in and how the malware is gaining persistence and all of that. So with dynamic analysis, it executes the malware to examine how it will behave in a live environment, right? As if it's infected you. Understand the functionality, also as how it establishes communication with the attacker. Using dynamic analysis, we can be able to figure that out. And then it involves API calls, instruction changes, registry changes. We are just going to analyze all of that. Now, the aftermath is that after your static and dynamic analysis is performed, the analyzer will import this data into the MITRE ATT&CK matrix, and then you would perform several analyses of what has happened, right? So you could analyze, some analysis has concluded that malware executed offline can behave differently than when there is an internet connection. That is extremely true, because the malware is waiting for a particular event to happen. It's looking for internet connection to do things. Now, if you have disconnected your internet, it's not going to act. It's just going to sit there and wait for you and be like, okay, if you're not going to turn on your internet, I'm also waiting. Once you turn on your internet, it will detect it, and then it will start doing what it has to do. It's just like the Stuxnet virus, where it had a particular task to do, but it was just waiting for a particular situation. It was waiting for a particular controller board, waiting for a particular controller system to execute its code. Until it meets that controller system, it wasn't going to work. So after everything, we'll look at virus total, and virus total would actually bring in some MITRE ATT&CK matrix information. So we are going to look at that when we are done. And then the tools that we'll be using today, we have Wins, SCP, PE Studio, Process Hacker, ProcDot. We will not use ProcDot today, but we're going to use CyberChef, Fitla. I think most of you have used CyberChef before, for examining code, decoding the code, removing the obfuscation, because most of the code sometimes is just encoded with base 64. So that would help. Wins SCP is used to transfer files, right? Like copy and paste, it's used to transfer files, or FTP. And then PE Studio is the granddaddy. I think it's best when we get there and then we start using these tools. It would really make sense than just to explain them. So at this point, on the 40-minute mark, is there any questions you have? I know I've talked to you a lot. Do you have any questions regarding everything? Because we're about to delve into the demo. Any questions? Unos, dos, tres. Okay. All right, so we're going to move to my window, my tools for exploitation. For this lab, all right, we have provided, if you have downloaded the Windows before, probably before today, the version you have may not have all of these tools. Wait, Matthew, okay. So you would see that the instructions have changed. We asked you to download all of the tools we mentioned, Win, SCP, all of that. But then we had Jasmine, and Jasmine just did some magic. She got the OS, put all the tools on there, including Microsoft Office, which is very hard to get because you might have to put in your credit card details and you might subscribe to something you don't want to subscribe to. So to save everyone from that, Jasmine has created a new OVA file of the Windows thing. So if you have already downloaded and you're in the process of doing all of this, I mean, sorry about that, but we have added a new file that you all have to download. If you can, it's best to do it because all the tools you need already exist in there. And then also, it even includes the Microsoft Office file. Now, this file is quite huge. It is a 15 gig file. So due to that, lucky for us, we don't have any other lab to do this week, just this, right? We don't have anything. So you have a whole week up until Sunday to do this, so you have enough time. And we are going to go through the lab today. So do well to download this. If you already have the old one, I would suggest that you put that aside and download this. If you have the old one and you are almost through with the assignments, carry on. But if you're not, I would suggest download this. It has everything you need. And yep. All right. So this is my new Remnex, and then my new Windows. So I'm going to start them up. Start my Remnex as well. So Remnux is actually Remnux, however you want to pick it up, but it's actually like an operating system that was made for, let's put that side by side. So that's my Remnux loaded up, and it contains, so just like we have Kali, and then Kali has tools that helps you sort of all the hacking you want to do. Remnux is mostly developed and it contains most of the tools that will be needed for malware analysis. So we would need that today, and my Windows is also loading on the side. So quick question, yeah, David, you could ask.
Yeah, so I have an internal network basically in my VirtualBox that I use for all the vulnerable VMs, you know, stuff like that. It's completely isolated. Would that work for this particular task, or does it have to be in host only? Or I think that's what it was in the...
So if you have a network that's completely isolated, I think it would also work. But then we have tools like DNS, that we have a fake DNS we are going to use and all of that. So that's why we might need the machine to point to the other, but on whatever network you have, if it's completely isolated, that also works.
Okay. All right, got you. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So for the Windows machine, the password is in the lab. You would see it in the lab instructions, and the password is password with a 0 and then an exclamation point at the end. So hopefully it works. Yeah, it did. And the password is also listed here. So once you get to that point, just check that out. Good. Now to start everything, I think we are going to start from the question David asked. And what he asked was, what kind of network do we need to put these devices on? And I think he sort of helped with the first step of what we're going to do today. And that is to put these two devices on the same network. The network we are going to pick for these two devices is the host-only network. So I'm going to pick up the machine details for the Windows machine. And then go into network and then change host-only adapter, because I just want this device to just communicate within my virtual machine, right? Don't go outside. So it's only going to communicate with my host operating system. That's it. Totally isolated, different kind of IP address and everything else. So when I click on OK, it's set. Then I'm going to do the same thing for my Remnux, same thing. So network, host-only adapter, pick the same name. I have 0, so I'm going to use 0. For most of you would be different. If you're using Windows, it would be a bit different. Just pick the same for both of them. And all of this is being picked from the host-only adapter already exists in your Windows VMs. And I think you would find it on yours, on the Windows ones, you'll find it under Tools. You would see Network Editor here and all of that. But for mine, it looks a bit different. So I'm going to skip that. Now, once I'm done with that, the next thing I'm going to do is, since I've completely isolated these two machines, I want these machines to communicate with each other. So I'm going to set up I know we mentioned that NAT network helps two machines communicate with each other, but the NAT network also provides internet connection and all of that. And that makes it a bit dangerous sometimes. So in order to change all of this, I would have to edit. So you could see that I'm connected to a network. So host meaning a physical computer. Yeah, physical computer, not Kali. So what we have here, you would see that there's a network, but then it's no internet, right? So probably, let's see if I could CMD. Command prompt. So if I try to ping, anything, right? Ping request could not find host google.com. So that means, yeah, I can't connect to the internet. So I'm going to change some information because at the end of the day, what I'm going to do is that, let me visualize this quickly. We share remnants. Right, I hope you can see the, yes, I think I just did. All right, so what's going to happen? I'm just going to visualize what's going to happen today. So we have our, this is Remnox, right? Big R. And then this is, wow, the Windows machine, right? The Windows machine you are going to download or you've already downloaded. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to run a virus over here, right? We are going to run a virus on this Windows machine, but however, we want to trick this virus that is going to run here to think that it's connected to the internet. Because currently I tried to ping and it wasn't working. And once the virus knows that there's no virus, there's no internet, it's not going to work. So our modus operandi, right, our mode of operation is to make this virus here think that, okay, we are connected to the internet. However, we are not. What we are going to do is every, when you are connected to a network, there's what we call the gateway address, which is like your router, right? Because that gives you access to the outer networks, internet or wherever it is. So what we are going to do is we are going to connect this Windows machine to this Remnox VM, right? And then we are going to make this machine think that this Remnox machine is this router, right? Or the gateway address. Let's just use the word router, it makes sense. Meaning that this is what is providing its internet. So whenever, even your current machines or your phones, right? Whenever they want to visit, you know what a DNS is. So whenever you want to, is this big enough? Is my screen big enough for those of you, the current one? Okay, perfect. All right, so yeah, just like a honeypot. Yes, just like a honeypot. Now, there's what we are doing. So DNS is, right, we know what they do. It's like a table, and it contains your IP address, and then your domain name, which is your website name in English words, right? If your website is in English. So it's just a table, 192 dots, blah, 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 would take us to google.com. Right. So if this is us currently, right? So this is Derek here. This is my phone, Derek's phone. So if I want to visit now, all of this, right, is located in my router. Right. Let's assume that just to make things easier. So the router knows where to go to get the DNS information. So if I want to visit google.com, my phone would ask whatever router we are using, and then the router will return the information that, oh, the Google you are looking for, this Google, the IP address is 192.168. It returns that. It'll actually go onto the internet to find that URL and then bring it back to me, the content. So I ask for the website, the DNS will give us that, will give that information to the router. Router goes online, gets everything and brings it back to me, right? So back to me. So what we are doing today is that we are going to make this machine think that this Remnox device is this gateway, right? And then we are going to run a fake DNS server, just like this. So if you're asking for google.com, This fake DNS server will tell you, well, google.com is located at the URL at the IP address 1.1.1.1, which is fake. If you're asking for codingdojo.com, it could just create a fake entry and say that codingdojo.com is located at 2.2.2.2, which is also fake. So we are going to run a fake DNS server here, and then we're also going to run a fake, we are going to run several list of fake servers, and that would be maybe a website server, which would be on port 80, a file transfer protocol server, which is on port 21. So HTTP, we are going to run a fake HTTP server, a fake FTP server, amongst a host of others. So if the virus starts to run and the virus is looking for HTTP or is trying to visit a website, it would ask Remnox that, hey, you are my gateway or you are my router. Do you know where I can find this particular website? And then Remnox will say, oh, yes, I can. Then Remnox will pull this fake website, which is fake server response, and then send it back to them. So then the virus will think that it has got the information it was looking for, which is probably the information that would have given it like extra files to download. But then technically what it received was a fake list of information. So that is what we are doing. We have our Windows machine. We are going to connect to our Remnox VM. And then that Remnox VM will have several things running that whenever the virus starts to run and it needs those things, like it's trying to visit a website, fake DNS will give that response, give the next thing, everything else will be provided. So that's what we are doing today. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Is that confusing or is clear? I mean, I need to say this, I feel like this is one of my best drawings ever, saving it. So clear the screen. We need to set both to the same adapter. Yes, you need to set both of them to the same adapter. Yeah. So now that we've done that, we are going to go into the Windows machine. And one thing you should know is the Windows machine is pretty strange, right? It's because it's an evaluation version, and from at whatever point it was downloaded, right? Like the first time was, I think it has about 30 days. And then after that 30 days, anytime you turn it on, it would only run for 1 hour and then it's going to shut itself down. So it's an evaluation version, it's fine, you can use it, but know that it will keep turning itself off after 1 hour. So once it turns off, do not be perturbed, do not be disturbed. Just go in there, start it up again, and then continue with what you were doing, right? This is not like buffer overflow where you have to do lots of processes again and again. It's a bit, you don't have to go through a lot to do everything, so it would be easier. So know that it would go off after 1 hour. And then also you need to always turn off your antivirus. So that would be the first thing I'm doing here. So to turn off antivirus, I'm going to click on this up looking arrow, right? Facing up. This guy here, I'm going to double click on that. And then you would have this screen, which is the home screen, right? So we have the home screen. I'm going to click on this box here. And once I click on it, I have virus and threat protection. So I'm going to go to manage settings. Then real-time protection is what we need to turn off. So I'm going to do that. It's going to ask for verification. I'm going to say yes, I'm absolutely sure. I don't need to do anything else, that's it. Now, when I close this, note that whenever your system restarts or whenever it goes off and it comes back on, that thing is going to turn back on. The Windows Defender is going to turn back on. For whatever reason, I didn't ask for that much protection. I'm impressed, but I don't know why it keeps coming back on. Then after that, we need to, we need to make the Remnox device our server, right? Or so that I could host the DNS and everything, so that all the requests we have will be going to that machine. So for that, we are going to go into the network settings. And to do that, I'm going to right click on this. For those of you that struggle with right click on the Mac, get an external mouse. Just joking. So just right click on this, go to Open Network and Internet Settings. And then Ethernet will be there because that is what we are using. We are not using, even if you are using Wi-Fi, what you are using is not Wi-Fi, it's Ethernet. So click on Ethernet. And then after that, you go to change adapter settings. So change adapter settings is where you want to go. Then you have your Ethernet showing up again. So for that, you're going to either right click on it, go to property. Yeah, that's the right approach. Right click on it, go to properties, and then you have a list of things going on here. Now, what we are trying to do is we are trying to change some settings. So the process looks like it's a lot, but it's not. When you are trying to follow the video, you realize that it's pretty straightforward. So you're going to scroll down to Internet Protocol version 4 TCP/IP. That will be the fourth option. Double click on it, or you could just put your mouse on it and then click on properties and you have the screen showing up. Now we are going to set the IP address. We are going to detect what we want, but we first of all need to find out what our IP address is. It's very important. So I need to find my IP address. So for that, CMD, click on enter, IP config. And our IP address is 192.168.56.102. Should you make a clone of this VM? You really don't need to because you have already downloaded the, well, I think you can, yeah, you can, but it's not really required. You can't do that. That is not required. So my IP address is 56.102.192.168.56.102. Someone should note that down because I'll need that. So we are also going to switch to our Remnox machine to see the IP address there. So I've switched. I hope you can see that too. Can you all see my Remnox machine?
Yes.
Perfect. So for Remnox, you know, it's a dark screen. What's happening? Once you turn it on, you would have this thing showing up in the center. But in case you minimize it, it would be at the bottom, right? It looks like there's nothing happening, but it's a full, like it has a graphical user interface. It's not just the terminal. So if I click on activity, you see, there's a lot. It's just trying to hide a lot of things, but you won't even need to go through the directories. All you need is the terminal. So since I'm on the same network, I'm going to ifconfig to see what's going on. And my IP address, which you all know how to find. Ooh, that's more than I asked for. So our IP address is 192.168.56.103. Someone should note that down as well. So this is the IP address for our Remnox. All right. Now, after that, we go back here. Because if we do obtain IP address automatically, it's going to work, but we need to set our default gateway, which will act as our router. And we're also going to set our own DNS server, which would do the translation of the IP addresses to the domain names. So if this is a bit too much, when you're watching this video again, just watch that explanation I did with my drawing, and then it would sort of make sense of why we are doing what we are doing. So I would use the IP address. So I need to specify the IP address of this Windows machine, and it was 192.168.56.102. And then for subnet mask, once you click in there, it's going to automatically populate it. So you don't need to do anything. I just clicked, it automatically populated, we skip. For default gateway, because we want our Remnox to act as our gateway, we need to put in the IP address of the Remnox server. And can someone put that in the chat? IP address of Remnox. Hello, from the other side. What was the last figures? 103. Thank you, Edwin, Jonathan, and Eric, and Alex. Appreciate that. So 103. Now for the DNS server, we also need to we have to put in this because of course, if it's your router, it has to know where the DNS server is. You could put in Google's DNS server, which is 8.8.8.8, but that's not what we are doing here. We are trying to manipulate things on our own. So we are going to put the same IP address of the Remnant server. So you are going to be our router, and you're also going to be our DNS server, so that you can handle any requests that come to you. That's for me to the Remnant device. So that's it. We've changed this, changed that. And yours, if you are doing this assignment, do not put in 102 like I've done here. 102, yours could be different. Even the 56 could be different. So check the IP address of both machines first. Oh, mamma mia. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, guy. And I've been blabbing all this while. So what happened was that I put in, I think I can do that again, just for demonstration purposes. So the IP address here, right, which is this will be my IP address because I'm trying to modify the gateway and everything. Sorry for the not showing that earlier. So I'm going to put in the IP address of the Windows machine. So 192.168.56.102. Then for subnet mask, once you put your mouse in there, it's going to automatically populate. So we have 255.255.255.0. That's fine. We don't need to change anything. Then for default gateway, that would be the IP address of our Remlux machine. So 192.168.56.103. Now this same thing would also be our DNS server, domain name server. So same thing as the Remlux server, because we want that to deal with .168.56.103 again. We want Remlux to be our DNS server and also our gateway. We don't put anything here, it's not important. So I was saying that don't put the same things I've put here, because yours could be different, because my network decided to use these 56.102, yours could be different. So always check what you have. And then this will be your Windows's IP address for IP address. And then this part would be that of your Remnant. So check that. And then if you don't do that, you are literally communicating with a ghost server somewhere and bad things could happen. So I'm going to click on OK. Close everything. I don't need to be here again, but I could ping my 192.168.56.10. I'm trying to ping the Remlux machine to see if it's going to work. So if I do that, I get a reply. So that means that it works. Now, even before you do these settings, once both of them are on host only adapter, if you try to ping, it might still work. So even if you are getting ping, it doesn't mean that you're actually isolated. I did this ping just to confirm that even after putting in the IP address and the DNS and everything, the two devices can communicate. That's all. It doesn't mean it won't happen if I hadn't done the settings. So after this, we are going to move on to the next step. Now, this is where the action starts. So we are going to go through a few processes and then hack a few things. Not hack, but analyze a few malware. So at this point, this is completely isolated from the internet. I have no scarce, right? So I can do anything I want. Now we have several tools that I'm going to run today. There are no particular order. However, the analysis part, there are times I'll run a static analysis tool. There are times I'll run a dynamic analysis tool and all of that. It doesn't mean you should. I mean, it just means that these are multiple tools that you could run to do the same thing. So you just have to go through them to know how they all work. But you know, for buffer overflow, it was just very systematic. But for this, we could even run two tools. For example, this tool here, Process Monitor and then Process Hacker, they do almost the same thing, right? But they have differences in their operations. So I'll run both of them to see how they all work. And so first thing I'm going to do is the first tool we are going to look at is PE Studio, right? Now, PE Studio is a tool that allows you to analyze, it sort of helps you get an initial assessment of, the malware, right? So instead of going through dynamic analysis, you just put it through and then it tells you, hey, this is what I'm seeing. I feel like this and this and this are included in this tool. So this and this is what you could do. Now, when you get your machines, you have PE Studio on here. And if you click on it, you may get this error. No matter how many times you do it, it's still going to pop up. Now, the reason being that the PE Studio works best when it's in its original folder. So for that, I'm going to copy this with copy. And then the original folder is in the downloads folder. I think gradually we might add this to the instructions, but this is for those that are going to do this. So if I go into the downloads folder, we have PE Studio here. So we have PE Studio, and you just paste it here into downloads. And once I paste it here, if I run it, it's supposed to run. So then it runs, right? You can either totally ignore this, or if you want it to still be on the desktop, you could just right click, go to send to, you could go to desktop, and then there will be a shortcut to it. So that next time you could be running from the desk. So this is the PE Studio shortcut. So I could close this one here, and then my shortcut is here. And this will still not run because the reason why it's not running is because it needs these pre-parser and XML files to run. So since it can't find it, it's not working. So you need a shortcut for it to work. So we can just leave both of them, it's fine. So once I open that, I might need to run a particular tool. Now, what we want to run is a very dangerous file, which is a Microsoft Word file, a doc. Now, this has been zipped because when it's zipped, the antiviruses cannot get in there to investigate it. So we might have to, it's named rep89. blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to right click on there and then go to extract all, right? It's the only zipped file on your desktop. So right click, extract all. We get this, we don't even change anything, just click on extract. It's going to ask for password, and the password is infected. If you forget this, the password will be on the platform. Password is infected with. Infected with small I, not a big I, right? Small I, small caps. So the reason why we put a password on there is that if you don't have a password, sometimes the antiviruses could scan it. So the password sort of prevents it from doing all of that analysis. So now we have this here and it's not vanishing because why is it loading? Because my antivirus is supposed to be off, hopefully. So now that I have this, I might have to run this too. And in order to run it, I could run it in PE Studio first to see what it's about, right? So I'm going to open PE Studio again. And then I'm going to click on the open icon here, or file open, any of them that you want, open file. And I'm going to go into my desktop, find the REP folder I just extracted, not the zipped one, the one I extracted. Go in there, find the file, click on it, click on open, and you would see that it says wait over here. Is this big enough or should I make it bigger? I can make it bigger if you want. Is it okay, or you want it bigger?
You're good. Oh.
Bigger, okay. Let's see. Change this to 125. Is it okay? Jonathan, can you confirm it is okay, or you still need more? All right, perfect. So it's still working on the indicators, blah, blah, blah. All right, good. So it's done. Now, this file on surface value has given us the MD5, right? This tool, PU Studio, it helps you perform initial malware assessment very quick. So first investigation was that this is the MD5. If you want, you could copy it and then take it into Virus Total. Now we'll need this at a later point to see everything we've done in retrospection. So we'll come back, pick this MD5 and use it later. And when we get to Virus Total, we realize that, yeah, it's a known malware. Now, indicators, it's telling us in a very straightforward way that, okay, these are the things I found, and we have several levels here. Now, level 1, as you see, is in red. So we have several levels, and 1 being like the level of, danger that this poses, right? So it's saying that there are 4 strings that it's found that have been blacklisted by PE Studio, but we are not seeing those strings. We'll take a look at them later. Now, there is also the extensions that it's finding is that this could be a ransomware based on the hash, because the hash is here. And then it's found several extensions, 13 of them, and that is also number 1. So that means it's very sure that this is very dangerous. Then there is suspicious strings. So there is a particular string or particular variable in this document file that is so big. Variables are not supposed to be this big. And this is about 5,000 bytes. So that's about 5 kilobytes. So it's too big. And the level is 2. That means it's not that. And then there are strings that have been whitelisted so that it is not detected. Now let's go to the string section. Now, if we were connected to the internet, the Virus Total site would have worked, it would have done all of the analysis. But I think I would rather copy it and then go and do my investigations later on than to allow this to connect to the internet. So on the string side, we have a brief overview of it. So many things going on. There is an ASCII string, which has 5,265 bytes, which I just talked about. Now the hint tells you what we are looking at, and the value is here. So we have set L, add, print, set, VBA. This is Visual Basic, and this is used to code what we call macros. Now macros allow you to sort of add some programming functionality to Microsoft Word files or Microsoft Office tools, right? So macro allows you to code, and you'll be coding in VBA, which is Visual Basic, and it allows you to code certain things, functions, and all of that. If you have certain activities you do a lot, you could use macros, and they are coded in VBA. So we see VBA 6, VBA 7, it becomes a bit suspicious to us. Now the tool here is Office. All these are legit, right? Now this is looking a bit suspicious. This looks like a long string. It's so long that it's 5 kilobytes. I can't view it here, but it's quite long. Now going down, we have macros here, which tells us that this particular document file has some codes in there. Now macros are not malicious. They help you improve functionality of your Word file. But however, attackers use that to exploit, use that for exploits as well. Now, moving downwards, we see, let's see if there's anything suspicious. Good. Now we have a few things here that are in base 64, and base 64 is an encoding technique. Now we're saying that these guys here are base 64 encoded and they contain something, but I'm not finding what it contains. Let's see, copy value. So these are mostly variable, and we'll see them later. So remember these guys here. Now every other thing here, we can skip them. But then the main reason why we did this helps us do some static analysis. So this is our first static analysis tool, having an initial assessment of the virus. Now there is HXD, which allows you to view these in hexadecimal, view all the memory address spaces and all of that. But with this virus, if we put that in, the information there is very hard to decode. So I'm going to skip using HXD here. But if you are feeling adventurous, you could use that as well. So I'm going to close this too, because now we've had some information, right? First thing we have is that there is some base 64 encoding going on somewhere. There are macros within this document file. We've not executed a document file, but we have had information about it. So I'm going to close that up. Close that out. And then we are going to try to move this document file. Don't run, I beg you. We are going to move this document file into our Remnux to see how it operates. And then at a point, we'll run it in Office to see how it operates as well. So we are, first of all, to move this there, we can't move it, and we can't really do an SSH and all of that because there's a Windows machine. So we are going to use WinSCP, which is an alternative that allows us to copy stuff onto, it allows Windows machines to communicate like an FTP server and all of that. So there's FTP, which is port 21. SFTP is basically secure FTP, right? Which could be secure shell or however we want it. So that's on port 22. And the host name would be the IP address of our Remnux machine. And what was that? I think that was 192.168.56 and then 103. Yeah, 103. We are trying to connect. What I'm trying to do here is simple file sharing. So I'm trying to share files within two devices, but I first of all need to connect to the SSH server on the, I'm trying to connect to the SSH on the other side. You remember when we did Python? And then this is what we did when we were using Python. We did this HTTP server, right? Where at that point, everything on our systems were available. We are trying to do another variation of that. But in this case, the other machine has a server open. So we are going to connect in there and then send files to and fro. Now with this one that we did before, you could only download files or have access to whatever was there. But with this one that we are about to do, you can actually either send files or also receive files. So there's a bit different. So I'm going to connect in there, and the username for the SSH in there, we use SFTP to connect to the SSH, right? So we are going to use, the username is Remnux, and then the password would be, I think it will be malware, I think. Yeah, it's malware. So that would also be put in the chat. That's the password for Remnux. So if I click on login, it's going to reject me. The server rejected SFTP connection, but it listens to FTP, blah, blah, blah. Do I want to reconnect? Now, it's not connecting because the SSH server is not turned on. Like the SSH service, just the service, not the server. The service is not turned on in Remnux. So we are going to move over to Remnux and then turn on that service. Can you see my Remnux? Can you see my Remnux? Perfect.
Yes, we can.
So we have SSH. Now, in order to start SSH, we might have to say, we would have done something like this, right? In Kali, I would have done this, service SSH start. But in this case, we could do SSH start, but it's not going to work because these, even though it's SSH, it uses the SSH daemon, D, right? And D, the D is for daemon, right? Now, this daemon is basically, it helps these services run in the background. So instead of you having an interface and everything, the daemon exists in the operating system, exists in the kernel. And once you invoke that or you call that, it allows you to start that service in the background without having to do anything. So SSHD means that we are calling the SSH daemon, and we are saying start. But before that, let's check the status if it's running. So SSHD status, and we have inactive, dead. So we are going to start it. For most of you, it might be turned off. So always, you could do that before you even go into your WinSCP tool. So once I do this, I can check again the status, and it says that it's active and running. So since it's active and running, started OpenBSD secure shell server, as I said, SSH secure shell server on port 22. So we are going back into Windows. Oh, it's reconnected. Don't do that. I don't like that. So apparently it was trying to reconnect every 30 seconds. So that's why by the time it tried to reconnect, I had already set things up. Good. So one time, 192.168.56.103. Username is remnex, just like the name. And then the password is malware. It's funny that everything we are doing here, the password is malware, infected. What next? So once I do login, it's authenticated, and then it's done. So I have access to the root folder, which is home/remnants. So that's what we have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that Microsoft Word file or the doc, which has been extracted. I'm going to move that into my Remnox system. So I'm going to drag this to this directory, and it's now showing up here, right? So to confirm that it's showing up here, we are going to go back into our Remnox. I should have done an ls before we did it, but it doesn't matter. So I'm going to clear the screen and then do an ls, and we have the document has arrived, fresh. It wasn't there before, it's there now. Now, since we have the document there, there are several things we could do to just analyze this, right? Now there's a tool in Remnox named strings, and strings allows you to view sort of what strings, basically like variable strings, are available and what they contain. So for that, all I need to do is to say strings and then the name of the file. Once I do REP, I press the tab on my keyboard, it's going to give me the full name because there's no other thing with the same name. So if I press enter, it's going to give a long list of stuff. Adrian Dumas, lots of stuff. All of these, this looks like obfuscated code, right? The code has been made to confuse us, but it's not going to work. And the variable names I mentioned earlier, where the PE Studio was mentioning that there were certain base 64. These are the guys. However, it still doesn't make sense until we see all of these in a different way. So I said, when we were doing that analysis, we also saw that there were some files that had hints of Microsoft Office. These are those files. So everything that the PE Studio provided, this strings command also provides it, but then it's a bit messy and it's too many commands. We don't need all of that. But that shows you that there are different tools that could actually show you all the strings available. So now, besides that, we need a tool named olevba. Olevba. So I'm going to put that here. I wish I could do a text. Let's see. So we are going to perform olevba, right? So what we did, our first step is to analyze the strings using strings command, basically. Strings command. And then the next thing we are going to do is to use olevba2, which is a script. Use olevba script to pass or deobfuscate, to just analyze, right? Let's just use to pass or analyze any macro that exists in there, right? Any macro that exists. I told you macro is the functionality macro, so it's a macro, and then allows you to program in VBA, Visual Basic. So now going back into our terminal, that's our steps. I hope I don't make a mistake of clearing the screen because I need that text. Okay, so the files are located in a URL named user local. This time is no user share, unfortunately. We are going to the Python libraries. So user local library lib Python, and there's Python 3.8 already installed. I've been there, so that's why I'm bringing that up. And then dist distribution packages. We are going to, so all we are doing is go into Python. We need the libraries of Python. There's one distribution package which is named Ole tools, one of them. Yes, thank you, Matthew. Yeah. So we are going into this directory, Ole tools, which contains the olevba script, and it's a Python script, basically, because it's Python. And that would help us sort of analyze if there are any macros going on in there, go through if there's any obfuscation that needs to be de-obfuscated. So I'm going to go into that directory, right, first of all. And once I'm in there, I'm going to ls. And these are all tools that I could use. mraptor, oleform, ole IDE, olemap, all of that. But we need olevba. olevba.py, not olevba3. So to run that, you know how we run Python tools, right? Python 3, because Python 3 is already installed. If I do Python, it might have an issue. So the name of the script, we are trying to run this guy here, olevba.py. And then once we run it, we need to provide the parameter, which is the name of the document. However, we are not in the same folder as the document we downloaded. So we have to provide the raw or the absolute, we have to provide the absolute location. So for that, we might have to do home, a little bit of remnux, because that's where it's located. So if it was Kali, it would have been home/Kali. And then the file was there, it was named rep. I don't want to type in the full thing, so I'm just going to do tab. And it's going to auto-populate it for me because that's the only file available there. So the olevba tool needs Python to run, but then I also need to provide the tool I'm trying to analyze or the malware I'm trying to analyze. And it helps you analyze Word files, document files, all of that, whether if it has VB or macro code is going to analyze it and all of that, even if it's OpenXML on and on. So once I do this, analysis complete, it took about a second, 500 milliseconds. Now, if I move, I'm still scrolling up. It's a long list, but so what we see here is an example of a macro, right? VBA macro code. However, this code doesn't look like human beings wrote it. The only thing that makes sense is do while, a loop, do while, and then the calculations 3 + 2, character 4, square. But these things look very strange, right? They look strange. It looks like someone has been doing things they're not supposed to do. So that means that whoever created the code has obfuscated it, which is to sort of change the structure of the code. And at this point, we saw base 64 when we were analyzing we were using PE Studio initially. So then I'm thinking that this might also be encoded using base 64 because it looks weird. No one names their variables like this. We name variables so that we can remember them. We don't name variables to forget them. So if it's looking like this, it's very weird. And almost all the codes, all these are codes, and they look pretty weird. But let's go to the top of the script. So as I said, it helps you analyze VBA macro codes. So I check the file, check the OLE, stream macros VBA, this particular one is checking all of that. Now I'm going to go down because at the bottom of it, there's an interesting thing we could look at. We are going to see a table. And this table contains a list of keywords it found or certain commands it's found in the macro, and it's here to help, right? So we have auto execute. So the keyword it found was document.open, and the job of document.open is that it auto executes a file. So this is what it does. It runs when the Word or publisher document is open. So immediately I open the Word file, it's going to start running. It's not going to ask for permission from me. So that means there is a command like this, meaning something is happening in the background. Now there is a command for create, which may create or execute a file system command through WMI, that's Windows Management Instruments. And then show window. Now, when we take a look at the obfuscated code, we are going to see that, hey, someone is using this command to sort of hide something. So show window can hide the application, So for example, if I want to use this terminal, right? I could use the terminal without, good example. When you hack into a machine, when you get a shell, right? Whilst you're using the shell, you know that whoever owns the machine does not see the shell being operated in front of them, but then you still have access to it and you are doing commands, you are performing several commands. So that is where this comes in. So in the same way, show window means that you could be performing commands, but then it would not be showing visibly to the whoever is using the machine. So we are going to jump. So CHR may attempt to obfuscate specific strings, you remember, and then CHRW may attempt to obfuscate as well. So if I'd used the option DEOBF to deobfuscate, I think I might have to try that. I didn't do that in the past, but I'll do that. And then base 64 strings. So base 64 encoded strings were detected. It may be used to obfuscate strings. So I should use this option decode to see all of them. Anyway, let's try this. I didn't try this before, but let's try this. It said we should try let's see. So it's trying to analyze to see if it could deobfuscate. Well, okay, let's scroll up to see if it gave us something. Yeah, it failed. Bravo. Anyway, let's try the last one as well. What was that? Decode. Decode. I'm trying this for those of you that know, have an idea. It said that there's base 64 strings and Visual Basic VBA obfuscated strings. But then I could use --decode to see all of them. So that's what I'm doing to see if you might get lucky. Oh, okay, so looks like, well, ladies and gentlemen, it still doesn't make sense to me because I'm human. It still looks weird. But we have other tools to look at this. So this is just to show us that from this point, we have you noticed we have still not opened this document file up until now, all this while. So this is how we could investigate. You could also upload it to VirusTotal, which would give you a lot of this information. So, but then in case the virus is new, it has different signature and all of that, it would be hard to detect. So that is why manual analysis is very important. So at this point, we know that there are base 64 strings. We know that it's trying to perform certain activities on and on and on. Now, after this, we are going to now execute the file. Now, to execute the file, we need to run the fake DNS we talked about initially, and then also do some simulations. So I'm going to clear this terminal here. So let's update our information on the right side. So step number 3, we are going to run fake DNS and inetsim, right? Inetsim simulator, right? To, mimic legit network operations. Does that make sense? Perfect. Then after that, we are also going to run the document file, not here, run the doc file in Windows. Right. Then after we run the file, we are going to analyze the operations using all the tools we've looked at so far. Analyze what's happening. Okay, so I've cleared that. I need to change my directory to my home directory. CD. I put in the home sign and I'm back home. LS, perfect. Now I need another terminal. So I'm just going to just click on this plus sign over here. And I have another terminal. Detach. I'm going to detach this because I need them side by side. Perfect. Make them small. I know I've detached, but I hope it's not too small for you guys to see. Let's put this here at the bottom so that we have enough room space. Perfect. Come on. All right, control shift plus. Yes. All right, now we have two terminals side by side. We are going to run two tools. Now we are going to run fake DNS, which means that you remember the Google example. So once I type in fake DNS, it already exists in the OS, right? It already exists in Remlux. So what's happening here is that you remember my Windows machine is connected to this automatically. So some things are happening. And what's happening is SLS updates Microsoft. So that means Microsoft is trying to really update itself, whether Microsoft, is trying to. So this is what happens. That means if whatever thing that's happening, it will try to send it to the gateway, which is our Remlux IP address. So once it sends it to the gateway, the Remlux IP address will just be showing everything here, right? So even anytime you make a query, it's going to come in here. So once it made the query, the response that the Windows machine got was that, hey, you asked for sls.microsoft.com. I can't give you that. Silver and gold have I not, but what I have is this IP address. So it is being redirected. Whatever you are looking for, we are redirecting you to 103. Yes, exactly, Matthew. Like, it's very testy looking for a way to update. And once I run the file, you're going to see a lot of things happening here. So for this, we don't need that much room. So I'm going to make it smaller. And then Watson telemetry. Wow, things are happening. So all these are DNS requests that are being done. So as you are sitting there with your phones are actually making requests. You just don't know. To the DNS, trying to ask, do you know where this is? Do you know where this is? On and on and on. Now, next thing we are running is iNet simulator. And you remember iNet from this command. If you do ifconfig, our IP addresses were located under iNet, right? So we are going to do iNet is internet network. So what we are doing is we are doing an internet network simulator, right? We are going to simulate a raw network, but in order to run that, we need to do iNet sim. So if I do that, it's going to set up a few servers, and starting from the top, I thought that was Matthew here. I was like, oh wow, I'm not surprised, but it was Matthias. So it's going to, so let's jump here. So it says that iNet simulator process has started. Raw date is 2023. The fake date and time is this. And it is creating these fake services. It has SMTP running, process ID 1770, SMTPS, right? FTP is also running, POP3 is running, HTTP port 80 is also running. So FTP running, so all these services are running. So if any of these guys want to visit a website, right, which will run to port 80, if they want HTTPS, they would come in here, and lucky for us, iNet simulator has a fake website it would provide in return. So if you are looking for CTDL, right, windowsupdate.com, the fake DNS will take you to this, it will bring you here, and then iNet simulator would say, oh, you are looking for a website, right? Okay, for that, we have a page for you. This is what you are looking for. You are looking for Windows updates, but yes, this is the Windows updates, take it, but it's the wrong thing, and we'll see that result shortly. So simulation is running, fake DNS is running, and we are going to move back into we are going to do the last two steps, run the document file in Windows, see what's happening, and then also analyze it. So share screen again, go back to Windows. I hope my Windows is not about to turn off, or probably I should turn it off and then restart it, since it's supposed to turn off after 1 hour. No, we can't. So yes, terminate. All right. Now we need to run this file in Microsoft Word, right? And we have these two tools that we need to look at quickly before we run the file. Now we have ProcMon, which is Process Monitor, made by Microsoft themselves, allows you to track what's happening in an application. So all these are services, processes that are running, registries, processes that are updating registries, whatever they are doing, you can double click on it, and then it shows you extra information about the process. Let me not bore you with the details, but I hope this is clear enough, right? The size, that's what I mean. Is it clear enough? Hey, people, is the size of the screen big enough? Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, yes.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Nadia. Oh, there we go. Circumstances are happening, situations are happening. Yeah, it's decided that is the time it has to restart. So I'm going to boot it up shortly. Whilst it's booting up again, do you have, yep, just when it was its time to shine, it decided to just freak out. Now, whilst I'm booting it in the background, if you have a question relating to all that we've done so far, if any of the processes have confused you, we have about 1 minute whilst the Windows loads up. You can ask it. You can ask your questions. Any questions so far? Issues downloading. If it says buffer overflow in the results tab of process monitor, that's probably a fake positive, right? I mean, I've not seen the process and seen probably what is leading to it saying buffer overflow. I mean, if you were doing buffer overflow and that happened, fine, but that's a bit of a, that's strange. It could be a fake positive, it could also be legit. So for anyone that has issues with downloading, it could be that maybe because you are downloading from Google Drive. So once there's a little bit of network twitch, it just decides it's not going to continue. All right.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
When we were looking at the macros and you said the variables were different and that was like an indicator that it was, I guess, malware. Was that like an assembly line? Because it had like 3+2 or whatever.
Yes. So that's an interesting question, but that was not that was not assembly line. That was
Okay.
just regular. That's how macro code looks. We would decode it and then you would see how it is in raw, but it's regular programming, just like the one we did for buffer overflow last week. But yeah, it's just that they changed some variable names to make it look like it's weird, but it's not. It's just regular programming, high level language.
Gotcha.
All right. Yes, and if your VM is failing, just like Matthew is saying, also check if you have enough space on there. And if it's failed and you want to do it again, make sure that you have deleted the files of the one that failed. So you have to go into directory, find anything, and just get it out. But hopefully Matthew's solution fixes it. All right. Now, besides that, one thing I could also add is that you could just download, if the TCP optimizer doesn't work, you could also just download a free download manager. That's what I used, and it helps keep like download stable. And even if it fails, especially for Google Drive, it allows you to sort of continue from where you left off. So that really helps in case yours is failing. All right, looks like our Windows is on. What is this? The identity of the website or the integrity, blah, 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 blah. What's happening? iNet simulator. Wow, allow the iNet simulator to do what it's doing. I mean, I like the fact that Microsoft has good security now. I mean, it's nice. So I need to turn off the antivirus, Windows Defender. Quickly. Turn it off. Confirmation off. Let's go. Close that up. All right, now, yeah, process monitor. So with process monitor, we have all of these things happening, and we have the result, the path of whatever process that is happening. And I think this is which part of registry is trying to open and query all of that. We don't need that much information right now. We don't need all of that. So what we would have done here is we want to monitor processes and analyze what's happening on the system. This comes from Microsoft. It could do more than what we're doing. If you do Control-Shift-T, I'm doing Control-T or Control, yeah, if you do Control-T, you have what we call the tree view, process tree, and that shows you what process started what process. So for example, this Windows initializer with the description and everything started this service, services.exe, and that started this. And this guy here started a host of services right underneath it. So it shows you the tree of the process, and the lifetime of the process shows you how long the process took before it's completed. So this process started and it's ended, but then the ones that you see full green shows that it hasn't ended since it started. And then we could go down. There are others that, I mean, once, yes, so this is the process tree. Now, the other section is, besides process monitor or procmon, we have process hacker, and that's also already installed on the system if you already installed it. Now, this has the tree by default, right? Wait, I thought mine was supposed to show a tree. I think I messed it up. I think so. So this actually shows you the tree by default. Yeah, I did something I wasn't supposed to do earlier, and then I messed it up. But it's similar. It has a few things different, and you could investigate more. See, for here, you could check the threads that are coming from it. If it's using GPU, your graphics processor, performance, environment variables, is using memory allocated, all of that. So process hacker does a lot. Based on what you choose, is up to you. It's up to your preferences. But today we'll use process monitor to monitor what we're going to do. So I'm going to run the file, but before that, yes, the last thing I need to run is Fiddler. Now Fiddler, the job of Fiddler is it captures all traffic that's leaving and coming into your site. So you see how Wireshark is able to, it's just on the network, but it captures whatever is going and whatever is coming. Yeah, similar, that's what Fiddler does, but I mean, not as in-depth as Wireshark, but it also holds its own. It can analyze what traffic is going and coming in by what process, what's happening, on and on and on. So as it's now, we have these three going on here, and probably if the Windows decides to do the updates, it's going to show up. But then even Fiddler itself tried to check for an update, as you can see, and it's failed because it wasn't getting anything in return. Good. Anyway, let's see. Good. So this is a nice example. Now, when I clicked on this, when I double click on this, this is the request. And then this is the response, right? Now, this is the syntax view, and I'm going to change to web view. And if I change to web view, this is what we have. It says that this is a default HTML page for iNet Sim, HTTP server, fake mode. This file is an HTML document. So as long as you are looking for anything on the internet, this is what iNet Sim will return to you and tell you that, hey, this is what you wanted. You are welcome. But apparently it's wrong. They were asking for information from fiddler2.com, but then this is what they got in return. So we are going to see that in action. So let's put Fiddler on the side here. And then I'm going to run the, come up here a bit. So I'm going to run the document file so that we see what's happening. So doc, double click on that. Hopefully we don't get any issues. If you get issues, I'll just show you a workaround. So you could see that Microsoft Office is trying to tunnel to Microsoft Office. Office is trying to do its thing. Word is running. And then it says that sign into Office, blah, blah, blah. We can just close that. And then it says most of the features of Word have been disabled because it hasn't been updated, right? Now it hasn't been updated because obviously it's disabled. But what we needed was for it to run the macro file, which I think has already run. You would see a lot of things going on here. But for most of you, once you download the file initially, once you unzip the file, it would say that cannot have access or cannot execute the macro. So what you need to do is to come back here. Why is it doing that? Right, so you might have to right click on the document file, go to properties. If you can't see that, and then you see this file came from another computer, it might be blocked because it was unzipped. So you might have to unblock it, apply, and then press OK. Once you press OK, if you run it, you would see another sign on the top saying that enable macros. It says that this file has macros, so enable. I've enabled it before, and that's why it's showing here. It's not showing. But for you, you would have enable macros. So just click on enable. And once you click on enable, you are going to see all of these web requests and all of that going on. Now we have a web request going to, I think this is Windows Update, so we don't need that. Now the next one is going to Amilano, WordPress, WP include, CSS. Wow, interesting. And then the next thing we have is, it's trying to visit. So this site, this word file was just opened and all of these things are happening, right? We'll see the macro code shortly. So all of these websites are being visited, but for each and every one of them, this is the response they are getting. If I go to web view, they are getting, this is a default HTML page for iNet Sim. Sorry, we appreciate your request, but you're not going to get what you want. So with all of these, we are able to log the information. So there are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 requests that have been done by just opening a Word file. They are trying to go on to see file labo. They are trying to just download extra files. That's all they're trying to do so that they could continue with the attack, but it's not working, not on my watch. So I'm going to minimize this. And I even forgot we are supposed to check this through Process P Studio or Process Monitor. So yeah, Process Monitor. So at this point, I will need the tree view. So I'm going to press Ctrl T to get the process tree. And if I scroll through, all I'm doing is it's supposed to be a small set of commands, but because the process tree was not running earlier, I'm going to sort of close the doc, my process tree. So I'm going to open Process Monitor again. Bring it to the right side. And then we are going to run the document file again. just to see if process monitor would notice what's going on. So if I open this, come back here to check the requests that are going to be made. The Word file is still trying to open. We are waiting for the things to populate. Good, so it's populating. Still Microsoft update. Good, it's coming up. Yes. So whilst the file is even opening, all of these are done. So this is all I needed. I'm going to close Office. I don't need it again because the file has run. Then I'm going to go into my process monitor. Press Ctrl T to get the process view, the process tree, the tree. And then I'm just going to go through to see any of the processes that are done. And you'll notice that these two guys here are done, right? It started and ended at 7:2. Started at 7:1, 58, 7:2. That's within 10 seconds, it's done. Besides that, all I'm looking at is, I mean, I've done this before, so it's easy for me to know what I'm looking for. Let me make this big. But in other cases, good. So description, make it big. Perfect. And the owner. So if I go through this, there are so many services that are running, and if it's grayed out, it means that it's done processing. So it's grayed out, it means that it's done processing what it was processing. But the only thing that sort of catches my attention is the guys we saw over here, and PowerShell is running, which is very strange. So PowerShell is running, and the PowerShell also started to use the console host, which is also strange. So what I could do is, if I check the command that was running, I see, let me make this big. I see PowerShell W hidden ENJAB, blah, 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 which is strange. And then besides that, I also see the next one, which is console host running C, blah, blah, C console.host. So this is not really a proper command. So I'm going to click on the PowerShell one, and then the details are here. Now the details that I have is PowerShell W hidden EN, and this looks very weird because it's long. It's not even short, it's pretty long. So I'm going to go back here. And we all know what PowerShell does. I think we've run PowerShell commands in the past, right? And even when we're installing Metasploit Tab 3. But then we have PowerShell W. So W is for window mode, and window mode is saying that hide the window. So that means don't show the PowerShell to the user, but however, you have to hide it. And then -EN is encode. So technically, this thing we are seeing here is actually encoded. So this is actually a PowerShell command that's going to do a lot of things, but we don't know what it means. So what I'm going to do is to copy this, scroll to the end to see everything else, because I'm going to copy that. I need that. So copy, yep. And then I'm going to go into CyberChef and then analyze what this is doing, because I need to know specifically what's going on, because I need to know what codes are happening. Because you remember all this while we've seen the websites is trying to access, but we've not seen the code itself. And this might give us a clue on what's happening. So I can close this. I think it would be best to minimize this in case I have to come back here. So I'm going to minimize, and we are going to go back into Remnux to just check a few things. We are almost done, people. Almost done. I know we've exceeded our time, but we are like 10 minutes away. So now we have, I think, using fake DNS, we were also able to analyze what was going on, which is all the websites was trying to access. So amlano.net, 911 Concepts, Ion Schools, everything else, all these sites, I think it starts from here up until here, were all being requested. So the information we got from the fiddler, which acts like Wireshark, we could also get that from our fake DNS, right? Now, besides fake DNS, we can also come into our fake server. I'm going to make that big. Let's analyze that. After that, we go into CyberChef, decode that code, and then we are done. So I'm going to end the simulation because I think we are done. We've seen what's happening. All the servers are stopped. However, the report is being written to this location. So, wow, I can't copy. Let me paste what I copied somewhere so that I can get back to copying. Right. So I'm going to do cut because I need to view it. And then I'm going to copy this text. Now, once I paste this, it's going to ask for permission because obviously it's in a location that I don't have access to. So I need sudo cut, and this is the response I get. Now, this is what I have. I think this is the interesting one. This is Microsoft Connect, but this is Amilano, and Amilano wanted this. It was a GET request, an HTTP connection. This is the logs of the simulator we set up. So we are just looking at it. So from here up onto here, all these are the requests that it made to the servers. So that also gives us an idea of what request the malware was trying to make. So we can use the INET simulator to get information on that. We can use the fake DNS to get information on that. And we can also use the fiddler to get information on that, right? Now that we are done, we need our last tool, and our last tool is CyberChef. It exists. Oh no, I think I might need to search that here. So I'm going to click on activities. So apparently once I did CyberChef, it's going to open the websites. So it's fine. They actually have a local repository of it. So we are going to look at it shortly. Then we are done. All right. Now, the code I copied from the PowerShell, I think it will be best if I bring up the whole PowerShell code. So I'm going back into my Windows to copy the whole thing, so that we see where it starts from. All right. Just a second, I'm getting the code, the full code. Yep, almost done. Got it. Minimize, good. So this is the code, this is the input. I'm going to paste that here. And this is what we have. We have PowerShell W to hide the window, and then encode to encode it. However, all of that is not relevant to us. So I'm going to take that part out, and we have this. Now, remember that we noticed a lot of base 64 in the past. So on the favorite side, we are going to say, from base 64, we believe, let's check that. So I'm going to put that here, meaning that this is base 65. I want you to decode it into something else for us. And this is what we have. We have $, WH, blah, blah, blah. Wow, that is strange. Now, upon looking closely, we see that there's always a dot besides every code, right? That means that someone just tried to use these dots just to switch things up, right? Like just to make it hard. C equal to ... again, just to switch things up. So then I would need a regular expression, regex, regular expression, this is this, bring that here. And then once I put that on here, it's going to load it, and then this is what we have, right? Now, what regular expression is going to do is that it's eliminated all the, I'm going to pause that so that you see. No, I'm going to void. Yes. So it's eliminated all the dots that were happening. So I'm going to get that to run again. And this is what we have. So we have WHT, blah, 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 on and on and on. Now, at this point, it looks close to code, but it still looks messy, right? And whoever did it used these weird variable names. For that, we will not be able to decode it. But then there is this, I see a lot of semicolons, and I'm going to farm that out. I see a lot of semicolons. So I'm going to use that to sort of, we are going to use that to create a delimiter, which is go to the next line. Anytime you see a semicolon, just so for like this, it would have been like this. Go to the next line if you see a semicolon. So I would need a splitter. So I'm going to search for split. I'm going to say split, whatever we have, I have to put it in between. For some reason, if you put it after the regular expression, it doesn't work. So you have to put it right before. So I'm going to do, anytime you see a semicolon, I want you to, so once I did that, it's automatically baking. So it just did it straight away. So after every semicolon, it's going to take the semicolon away and move to the next line. Now we have a more closer code, like something that makes sense. And what's happening is, I mean, this is code, but it still looks very weird. Unfortunately, the variable names were chosen just to confuse. I don't know what they use for that. For that, we can't decode, but this sort of makes sense to me in a way, right? For example, if I go through this and jump to this line, let's copy this. Because I think, yeah, that's all we need, right? Now I'm going to go back, find, let's say, a mouse pad or something that would allow me to oh, there's no mouse pad here. All right, Nano. Anyway. Let's see. Yep, we have Nano. So sad. Okay, so we have this code here, and it looks pretty strange, right? This is what we got. Now, all that this is saying is we have a variable named this, and we want you to put this string in there. Ignore the fact that it's weird list of numbers and characters. Let's look at the content of the values that are in there. So we see 267, and then in a way, I'm going to replace this code with what I know, right? Just to fix things up. So DAB, blah, 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 is 267, right? And that same DAB, that variable has been called here. And the plus is concatenate. So in the end, what is happening is this new variable is equal to environment variable, and it wants the user profile. And it's going to say that, okay, once you get the user profile, I want you to do a / and then put this value here. And what's the value of this? 267. And then once you are done, do .exe. So I'm going to sort of do, oh, I hate Nano. So this is the value, right? This is not part of the code, but this is what we are going to get. env user profile, and then / and then the value of DA, because plus is just add. So like sort of put something at the end of this, right? Like join. Is the value of DAB is 267. So I'm going to have 267 here. And then plus, that means join it to .exe. So this whole variable, right, P, Q, Z, O, Q, whatever, it's going to be equal to this. And this will give us this. env.user profile / 267.exe. That's it. That's what we are getting from here. Now, this is basically GWC. I don't think we'll need that, so we'll skip that. And then RT blah, blah, blah is equal to, now this is a bit interesting. Let's take it. It looks messy, but take your time and look at this carefully. And we see N plus EW. So we are going to put that here, just like we are doing so far. I mean, I don't understand every code, but I'm trying to use basic things to understand what the code is trying to. So N plus EW. And the reason why they do some of these plus and dots and all of that is so that if there's a signature detection or there's some file that can read what's going on, it will not be able to read it because there are too many concatenations going on. For example, if I jump here, there is download, but then download has been, there's O, there's W, there's capital N, just to confuse any detection files that are available or detection software. So this N plus EW is new plus, then there's hyphen, and then plus objects. That means join it to objects, right? So what's happening here is this. That's N%, which would be memory location, but let's ignore that. So once I close it, and then it's going to try and connect to the web client, right? So net.web client. So that means it's going to start a new web client object, meaning that starts a new internet connection. That's all they are doing. So it's going to invoke and then start a new web. So now this means, let me put the explanation here. Today we are going deep into code, but it's nice. It's a nice experience. So net web client would give us, let's do something nice like ... right? And it means new, create, I might be wrong, but I'm thinking is a new web connection, right? Create a new web connection. And then this is sort of file name to download, or file to download from all the servers we are trying to, the file we are trying to download. That should be the name. Good. So file to download, create new web. Now we have this point, YZUD blah 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 is actually a URL. And then once it got here, there was a star, and the star came up with another URL again. Hey, please don't click, don't put me in trouble. So we have another URL going on with another star, which is asterisk. And so there are about, let's see, don't click. Okay, so there are 1, 2, 3. I think there was more than that. Anyway, let's deal with just these 3. So what happens is it's going to try, that code will be next, but it's going to try the first link. If it doesn't, to find if there's this file. If it doesn't get it, it's going to try the next link, which is from here to here. It's going to try this. It's going to go there, do / put this at the end. If it doesn't find it, it's actually going to try this, do the same thing. Then at this point, we ignore this line, but then we come to the next. So for each, you remember where we did the buffer overflow, we said for each line, I want you to go through this. For each line, I want you to go. So the same thing, it's saying that for each entry for each thing, I could actually change this. I mean, in terms of code, just to make you guys understand, I could change this to say that for each URL so for each URL in this particular variable, which is all these 3 addresses, right? For everything that you find here, I want you to try this, which is try. And what we are trying is RTB. Now, where is RTB? I move back here and RTB, whatever is going on. And that is where we create a new web connection. So what's happening here is create a new web connection dot download file. And then what are you trying to download? Put in this could also, I might have to change this too, since I started this whole worm. Let me continue with it. I dug the hole for myself. Right. We are not running this code, so even if I mess it up, it's not going to mess up. So what's happening here is for each of them, each URL, create a new web connection, which is RT, blah, 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 and then try to download a file. It's been messed up, but that's what it means. Download file, if you can see that. And then use the URL, which is the first one you'll find here, the first URL, comma, and then do PQ and PQZ, blah, 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 which is this. is this guy here, and the end result of this guy is the file we have to download. So technically, at the end of all of this, all that we are trying to do is this, right? All we are trying to do is, let's use this website as an example. Copy. So what we are trying to do is, hey, pick first website and then try and create a new web connection, right? So new object into bracket net.web client. And once you're done with that, I want you to do this. I want you to go to this URL, paste, and after that, I want you to download this particular file on the URL. So this is what we are doing. Ignore what it means, we don't care, but we are trying to do an internet connection. And the internet connection is that we need to visit this URL, and I need you to download the file name 267.exe. So in this case, if my device was connected to the internet, like if my device was connected to the internet, this 267.exe would have been right in front of me live and colored. So for the assignment, you are not supposed to analyze all of these codes. It doesn't really matter. All that you are supposed to do is to probably get that code, take it to this part, and then probably say that you were able to discover that it was trying to perform all of these web requests. That's it. And then we are done, right? But then the main point of the assignment is for you to go through all the tools that were available, process monitor, process hacker, fake DNS, INET simulator, on, and then in the end, you get to the end of this. So this is a walkthrough of the assignment for this week. This part I did is just extra information for those that want to go the extra mile. It's absolutely extra information. I was going to say relevant, but no, it's very relevant. Now this falls under threat analysis, right? Malware analysis, threat analysis. So what we did is a clear example of dynamic analysis. We made the file run, we analyzed the file, and then after that, we also tried to analyze the code, right? Static analysis and all of that. So that brings us to the end of this. If you have any questions, you can ask.